Today we'll continue our lesson in Chapter 12, Section 2. And in Chapter 12, we are learning about the Renaissance and the Reformation. And in Section 2 of this chapter, we will learn about the Northern Renaissance, or the influence of the Italian Renaissance to the northern part of Europe. Go ahead, log in or get your textbook. If you are logging in online, it will be on Clever, and from Clever, Cengage Learning. And from Cengage Learning, log in with your student account and password. And from there, from the left side, Unit 5, Chapter 12, Section 2, and that is pages 338 to 339. Well, the chapter's essential question is, how did new ways of thinking transform European culture? Well, the objective of this lesson is to summarize the achievements of William Shakespeare and analyze the influence he has had during and after his life. William Shakespeare is an influencer. Like many celebrities and influencers, if you may, a lot of people doubted the works or the achievements of William Shakespeare. The reason why people doubted his accomplishments is because he didn't have a university education. Well, these doubters or haters have identified other writers of the time as the authors of Shakespeare's work, but they've never been able to prove their theories. Maybe some people can't believe that a man of humble background could pen some of the greatest plays ever written. But that seems to have been exactly what happened. I'm 100% sure that you probably seen a movie or read a book that is somehow directly or indirectly was influenced by William Shakespeare. You've probably seen The Lion King. It is influence of Shakespeare's Hamlet. We can actually go on and on about the influence of William Shakespeare to literature and, well, generally to entertainment, but we will just focus on his major accomplishments. Well, his finest accomplishment is writing and performing for his patrons. Remember, patrons, those who support or finance or give money for an artist's work. First, Queen Elizabeth I, and later King James, the first of England. And his worst moment, perhaps the death of his son, Hamnet, at age 11. Well, about his death, unlike many writers of his day, he died a rich man and left most of his possessions to his daughter, Susanna. What a lucky young lady. A little trivia, some of the writers of his time didn't respect him and referred to him as an upstart crow. Well, this is an old English insult, and I believe the meaning of this is, in a way, they are telling him that he is a noob, a beginner, a starter, or whatever. So he is not experienced enough to play in the big stage. He is a playwright, poet, and actor, and he lives in Stratford and married to Anne Hathaway. Sounds familiar? Well, I guess now you know where the inspiration of the name came from. He had 3 children, and one of those, of course, is Susanna, the one who inherited his vast wealth. The bard, or poet, a person who writes poems and other pieces of literature. In the midst of the Renaissance, William Shakespeare went to London, and he began as an actor and apparently had a successful career. Like many successful actors of our time, eventually he co-owned a theatrical company known as Lord Chamberlain's Men and began writing his own plays. Since he is an actor and a good writer and owner of this theatrical company, eventually he is basically doing everything: writing, acting, and producing his own shows. He wrote about 150 poems and 37 plays, including tragedies such as Romeo and Juliet and comedies such as Midsummer Night's Dream. When you say tragedy, these are generally, for the lack of better technical term, they are heroic, and most of the time, the main characters in stories like this or plays like this, they die. So that's what happened. Of course, common people like us, we call this as sad movies. But the truth is, there are lessons that we can learn beyond just the fact that the main character died and we are crying and sad and heartbroken. But the truth is, the main objectives of these tragedies is to teach us something that is beyond life, like love for country, family, and of course, romantic love, as the story of Romeo and Juliet. Shakespeare created complex characters with deep emotions and used clever wordplay to make his audience laugh or cry. The plays also reflected the Renaissance mindset, which is humanism, right? The focus is in the individual. They dealt with human life rather than religious themes, and many of the plays were based on stories and characters from the classical Greek and Latin works. For example, William Shakespeare created a play about Julius Caesar. The picture that you are seeing here is from the movie Romeo and Juliet. As a timeless work, its themes can be interpreted and expressed in many ways, and the story can be set in many different eras. This film version takes place in the present day and features actors Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes. Now let's talk about his patrons. So most of Shakespeare's plays were written during the Elizabethan age, or the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, which lasted from 1558 to 1603. Elizabeth spoke many languages, wrote poetry, and was a gifted musician herself. The Queen supported the Globe Theatre, and this is where the plays happened, where many of Shakespeare's were performed before the people from all walks of life. After Elizabeth died, her cousin James I rose to the throne. James soon became the patron of Shakespeare's theatrical company, which then changed its name to the King's Men. There's a movie about that, right? King's Men. Shakespeare wrote some of his greatest plays, including Macbeth, under the king's patronage. Shakespeare retired at age 49 and died 3 years later. Well, he was 52. Several years after his death, his plays were collected in a volume by his friend Ben Jonson. He understood his friend's genius, and in an introduction to the volume, Jonson wrote that Shakespeare was not of an age, but of all time. Now, what does that mean? It means that William Shakespeare is indeed an influencer not just of his own time, his own place, but his influence exceeded beyond his time for many years, centuries actually, and beyond the continent of Europe as well. Now I know you are excited to answer the review and assess questions, but before you do that, I want you to enjoy the music from Flocabulary about the great William Shakespeare.
William Shakespeare is regarded as one of the greatest artists who ever lived. He was a major playwright, poet, and actor in London, England during the 16th century. He wrote 37 plays, 154 sonnets, and 5 long poems. They built an entire theatre for his work called The Globe, and he died on his birthday. How's that for poetry?
William, Mr. William Shakespeare got one thing that we want to make clear. He's a master, the bard's got bars. His work still got what it takes to get your charge. William, Mr. William Shakespeare got one thing that we want to make clear. He had it all, love, death, intrigue. He was ill with the quill in his own league.
Shouts out to Shakespeare the bard. He was so prolific, yo, where should I start? With his tragedies, where the hero has a flaw that gives rise to his demise, downfall. Like Hamlet, you know, to be or not to be. He struggles with revenge, you gotta read. But Shakespeare wrote comedies too, usually about love or some drama with boo. And they tend to end with a marriage, but there's always a twist. Yeah,
there is 12th night, where nothing is as it seems, for a little fantasy of Midsummer Night's Dream. And we can't forget Shakespeare's histories about England's kings. It's a breeze. There was Henry V and Richard III. Embellishing the facts is what he did with his words. I see his subjects still resonate centuries later. Love, death, fate, dealing with your haters. Shakes wrote stuff that everybody jams with. Like, did you know the Lion King's based off Hamlet? William, Mr. William Shakespeare got one thing that we wanna make clear. He's a master. The bard's got bars. His work still got what it takes to get your charge. William, Mr. William Shakespeare got one thing that we wanna make clear. He had it all: love, death, intrigue. He was ill with the quill in his own league. Shakespeare was a master of language in a class of his own. No rapper could hang with. Part of his plays are completely in rhyme, like Macbeth. I could read a couple lines. Double, toil and trouble. Fire burning, cauldron bubble. Fillet of a finny snake in the cauldron, ball and bake. That's a reference that Macbeth was gonna struggle. He hit him with the wordplay, straight and subtle, like when Romeo compares Juliet to the sun, or when Macbeth says his mind is full of scorpions. There's figurative language, page after page, and as you like it, he says all the words are staged. Matter of fact, he penned many a famous phrase: love is blind, full circle. I could go on for days, but if you still don't believe, he fought fire with fire and wore his heart on his sleeve. He even invented his own words, all kind of adjectives, nouns, and verbs. Fashionable, gnawed, disheartened, puking. He even invented swagger. What y'all thought that was a new thing? William, Mr. William Shakespeare got one thing that we wanna make clear. He's a master. The bard's got bars. His work still got what it takes to get your charge. William, Mr. William Shakespeare got one thing that we wanna make clear. He had it all: love, death, intrigue. He was ill with the quill in his own league. William.
Alright, so now let's go to the review and assess questions. The first one, reading check. How did Shakespeare's plays reflect Renaissance ideas? And number 2, make inferences. Why do you think Shakespeare's plays appealed to all people, from the very wealthy to the very poor? And number 3, analyze language use. What does the phrase "not of an age but of all time" suggest about Shakespeare's legacy or influence? Now go to our Google Classroom and open the review and assess assignments. Fill up the basic information: last name, first name, class period, date, and the key vocabs, of course. Put them on the right side, the title of the lesson, and obviously the answers to the review and assess questions. And if you want to get a full credit, of course, on top of your correct answers, you need to write incomplete sentences as well.